This morning we're going to release the hinges, clean up the tail planes and release the control surfaces on them. Okay. Okay. It's a matter of, I have masking tape on the back of the steel so that it doesn't scratch paint. I've also checked the steel for straightness, and this side is a bit wonky, so I've marked it. This is just a matter of trim, just to take any sets off the side of it. You could do this to a sort of a template or something, but it really doesn't matter as long as both the tail planes are the same. Didn't think that through very well, did I? Okay, so that was the finest piece coming off. Gives you a lovely straight edge. This is 80 grit wet and dry. Lovely. Okay, now, if you can see, the leading edge here is the overlap from the mylars with the paint, etc. But there's a Kevlar wrap on the leading edge there. So we're just going to knock that down to that. Yeah? Okay, thank you. Just got to go carefully so you don't knock into the Kevlar. Once we get level with it, which is there, we'll simply round these edges out. Normally do this up on the corner of the bench. Just about got it. Okay, you might be able to see, just touch the Kevlar a little bit there, there's a little bit of fuzz. It could be where there was an overlap or something. The best thing to do with that is hit that with a little bit of CA, and then it will just sand off lightly. Excuse me. Okay, now it's this part. We need to just clean that up. It's difficult to get in and sand there, so trim it a little bit first. I don't always, but this one does have Kevlar wrapped around this edge here. Okay, that's one ready to go. Then we simply overlap and compare them, see where we need to cut. So let's clean this edge up first. Okay, that's good. Okay, beautiful. can see that overlap. Yep. It's not quite even either, so we'll mark it. Again. Okay, so we have now a matched pair. Lovely. Right, what's next? Yeah, something very handy about this this tail plane is that the control surface is parallel. So all we need to do is to lay this edge where the notch is and make sure it's parallel, and then we're in. .37. Now, these are all top hinged, so we need to cut through underneath, but we don't need to cut all the way through, so we limit the size of the blade, lock it, and then slice. Very carefully. All we're trying to do is get through the skin, really. So once you get through the skin, and once we score this back, the balsa will just split along that edge, which will be very nice. So, again, we need to mark. We have our mark here. All we need to do is transfer it here. Okay. Yep. Yeah, we just check that that looks about right. Yep. Now we score. Here we're not going through very much skin. And it's a fairly thin section. So, according to plan, that should just break. There you go, see? Now you've got to work the hinge a little bit, and we need to open this up a tiny bit. Now it's the thickness of the skin and the paint which is stopping that opening. When it's jagging, it's actually catching on the Kevlar, so be careful once you get to that stage. See, that will bend back further now. Okay, why do we need that? Because now we need to sand away a level there so that the hinge will operate the other way as well. So for that we need a block of foam. Basically, put the foam at 90 degrees and try and sand it as close as you can to a 45 along there, without hitting the hinge, of course. Going to try and bend it a little bit past 90, so it's a big ass glue stick. Okay, so there you go, 2 finished tails. Okay, so here's the frightening bit. The frightening bit is always cutting out the control surfaces for me. So first things first. First thing is we need to trim the trailing edge off. If you'll see down the line there, sometimes this can have a bit of a wonk and sometimes it has a bit of a curve upwards on the trailing edge, but that's alright because that's going to be cut away. So we simply need to mark it, but we need to get an idea of where the leading edge is first. So this hasn't been touched since it came out of the mould, really. Out of the, not the mould. So we're just going to clean up this edge. Okay. 120. Now, I always check because I'll often find that I get a curve inwards here because you put more pressure over there than you do up the ends. So just look down the edge, sure enough. And that looks pretty good. I mean, you could clean this up a lot more, but you can go overboard as well. Now, for the most part, these wings are very good, they're very accurate to their shape, as accurate as they can be for a bagged product. Something you'll always be disappointed with is if you expect your tips to be the same. You'll see the tip, I don't know whether you can pick that up really, but the tip has waves in it and we're simply going to knock them over. One of the reasons I like to have black on the tips here is because once you've knocked that over, it's easy just to give that a quick spray and clean that up. Typically the underside is pretty good because it doesn't come up as much as this tries to go down. So I just have to go to the edge here. Probably see it much better now. You see the little dings? Yep, that's rounded that out reasonably well. And there, hopefully you can see the underside is much cleaner and that can just stay exactly as it is, whereas the top side will need a little bit of paint, but that's nothing, and that's about as bad as it ever gets. Sometimes you just move the mylar just slightly too far down and it just won't conform. There you go. You see I've also tried to stay away from the colour, kept it on the black. Alright, so that's one. The other is at the inside here. We need to square this edge up a little, simply because we're going to measure off that tends to help if you can put a little bit of weight along here. So as you're moving here, it stops that wing going that way. Now the rest of this has to be gouged out anyway. There's no point taking that all the way down, and just past square is fine. This has to be gouged out anyway, and a 12mm ply rib will go in there, halfway in and halfway to the other, and that'll help with the join before the bandage is put on. So here I have some PVC templates. They're marked trailing edge, root and tip. And then what you need is a spacer, which is also marked root. Sorry, can't do that yet. First we have to do is trim this edge off. So again, these are templates that I use for blocking out the foam. So just mark around and cut. So root, we'll line up the leading edge. That'll give me an idea of where this trailing edge needs to be cut. It would look to be about there. On this guy, so that's square, therefore it's on the trailing edge. Lock these up together. Trailing edge, leading edge up there. And we get about there. That will give us a nice slice to take off. Now, my normal rule is too short, so we use the big guy. For some reason I've taken off the tape, so I'm going to re-put that back on. To make sure we're not scratching the surface anyway. Okay. Yes, I suppose we should do both. Now I use tape on here, but you can't rely on it 100% to hold it. All you can do is use it to help you keep it stable. Don't ever take your own hands off the ruler, because it will move. Okay. Something out of the Phil Barnes video: before you do these, always get a nice sharp point to work with, and then it's just not much pressure for the first part. Now, this is not just cutting through skin. There's a layer of 100 veil, and there's a 165 layer of glass here, which it goes behind the carbon. Plus, there is a carbon toe running all the way through the trailing edge, which I like to put in. It keeps them nice and stiff over time. And I suspect that's what we're running into here, which is making it a bit more difficult. Right at the end, you've got the overlap from the carbon that went around the leading edge, which you've got to cut through there as well. There you go, there's cut done. Not quite done. Okay, so there's our strip. Just looking, if that'll focus on that. There's no carbon in that, so I must have placed the carbon well to get it just in behind there. So now it's just a simple matter of very carefully just cleaning the edge up. Not trying to put any shape into it at all, just so you get no sharp edges. And there you go. Now, one thing to look out for though is that that edge is now carbon reinforced and it's 90 degrees and it's sharp. Okay, so you can catch yourself on that, and once the ailerons or the spoilerons are cut out, you'll see that those edges are all nice and very sharp too, so you can be very careful with that. Okay, so there you go. Nice straight edge. Okay. Now we can start marking out. Trailing edge, root. Tip, root. Trailing edge. So we simply position this one. What I tend to do is put a piece of tape there. Put a big enough piece of tape that will show the actual line for the cut. And can mark the depth for the scribe mark. Yep. So, it's on. This one's here on the trailing edge. Same deal. Okay, double check, measure twice, double check, space is good. Okay, so that gives us our line for a scribe, and we may as well just do that now. I don't know if you can see, but you can probably guess this tape's not going to touch anything on the wing. This one's barely touching, and that one's there, but you can go past it on this tape and put a piece up on that edge. As well as up on this edge. A bit of tension there will stop that moving down. There. And there. All you have to do is remember to stop at the tape. Okay? So, double check. The first layer is really just taking paint. But as I said, there is 270 grams worth of glass there that you're going through. I'm doing this about out of order. Normally I would put these cuts in first, and that way the scribe would have something to sink into and sit hard against, but we'll do those just straight up next. I'm not putting a whole lot of pressure down on this scribe. Part of the pressure is against the ruler to make sure it doesn't waver. Okay, I think 4 will do us for the moment. Hopefully you can see it's a lovely neat line. Okay, going to use a oscillating tool. Hardest part with this, I find, is to keep the tool vertical. Keeping it going straight, as in square, doesn't seem to be a problem, but getting it line up with the one underneath seems to be very difficult. Anyway, let's go. Okay, so let's cut through there, here, and partially through there. Okay, now I haven't marked this side yet, so I'll wait till I mark it and then we'll clean that cut up. Always be very cautious about what sits on there, because you're pressing on, you don't want to ruin a nice part just because you've left a bit of junk on the bed. Okay, now again, doesn't hurt to secure this a little bit, that way you're not worrying about it sliding, because they slide pretty well on the beds. Can you see this? Yep. gut-wrenching moments. Okay, so we've got a good cut there, and mostly there, so that's pretty good. So if I put a bit of tape on here, tip, now I always scribe 2 marks, I don't know if you can see them, because we're needing to do the initial cut and we need to do a second cut to give the V for the control surface to operate in. Okay, so same up here, get some tape down, root end, outside mark, inside mark. Okay, so now we can just finish this little bit off. Okay, and that's done. The reason it looks a little bit ratty there is because you're catching the end of the bit of Kevlar, which is probably gone just a millimetre or so past where I wanted it to, so you're getting that little bit of fuzz, but that's okay. Never a problem. Okay, so they're cut up to length. We simply need to scribe that a little bit more as we go. Okay, so now we need to cut this guy. This is the fun stuff. Okay, so we're going to the outside mark, the first mark, because that's the one that gets the actual cut. Get that down as well as we can. Okay. So once again, check the marks. Secure this thing as best as you need to. Okay, once again, nice sharp point, not too deep. All we're trying to do is get through the skin here, and you'll see why in a minute. Okay, so checking that mark, this one, doing the cut. I don't know if you heard that then, but it dropped into the slot as I was describing before. Okay, rather than pull it past, I'm going to stop it a little bit short and then come back and just open it as it requires. better than having a piece left over. Okay, so that's got through the skin all the way through there now. Just need to finish this little bit. Okay, so before we do anything else, we need to simply remove that. Get ourselves a new safety blade. Okay. Now the idea here is you bring this cut to the edge of the blue, close to it, and then as you cut, all you're doing is cutting the foam now. You press down with your thumb and it opens the gap up so there's no foam pulling against the edge. And the advantage in that is that when you get to the bottom where the Kevlar is, you can feel it because there's no other pressure on it. So we're trying to get as absolutely vertical a cut as we can get. Just move our hands along. I can feel that dragging on the Kevlar, which is fine. Won't hurt it unless you press hard. Just dragging. Wonderful. So that cut's done. Now we do the second cut, which will allow us to open the gap for the control surface to be able to deflect down. And this is always just a bit of a guess. I work on the principle that you need more up than down. Typically, you know, if you bias your surfaces like that, you get better performance. So you don't need much of a gap is what I'm trying to say. You can always open it up more later, but it's you know, it's more mucking around if you do that. Now this one, all we're trying to do is just through the skin. I mean just through the skin. So that's almost through here. Yep. Again, we've got to work backwards from here rather than go. There we go. So if we've done that right, we end up with a nice piece with a bit of a taper and done. So now we have that. Okay. It's already cut all the way down. It's already cut here, so it's free now to deflect. It's simply whatever's here is going to stop it moving. So, for the very first time, stick this guy on here, which will allow us a little bit of pressure across the hinge line, and just go crack. So it's very tight, which just means that there's still lots of material sitting on top of the line of the hinge. So very carefully. You can help yourself by deflecting that up a bit to give it some guidance, and then just be aware of where this hand is here, because if you run it either way you run the risk of running it off. See, that cut practically removed nothing down, it just removed stuff to the side a little bit. So this is again paint and just very top layer of glass. So now we can carefully what we're aiming for is the thinnest hinge line we can get on the top here, just to keep it aerodynamic. Okay, let's see if that moves a bit better. See that? Much less effort, twice the distance. Okay, but you'll see, I don't know if you can see the line close? See it open? So the line here is closing on itself and that's stopping it coming up. That's simply all that's going on. And because we're going to use spoiler-ons with this, we really want about this much travel, but we don't want it to be restricted to get there, so we'll just take a little bit more out. And again, probably more than half of this is coming from the sides and not going any depth, so we're not going near the hinge itself. Bugger. It's not a word you like to use when you're doing this stuff. Don't know what it's like where you are, but here it's 35 degrees and about 1000% humidity. See, we're almost getting 90 degrees there, so that's easily getting up to where your spoiler-ons need to be, which is, experience says about 35 or 40 degrees. Okay, and that hinge will loosen more as you work it. And there's also the next bit, which is we need to take this piece out so that the control surface can deflect this way, and that will also help loosen the hinge. So, and that's why we need to be able to move this about, or at least 90 degrees, so we can get in here. Now this is going to be difficult to show on there. Don't know if you'll be able to see it. The idea is we need to slide, get that under the tip so that you can slide that in there and pick up that bit of foam, and then basically you run down, and the tip of this is basically trying to get right at the hinge there itself. Just going a little bit deep there. You should almost see it coming out. And at the bottom end you've just got to do a little bit of squiggle. Once you've done that, that piece should just pull out. Very close. There you go. Almost got it. Okay. So that now gives you movement this way as well. Okay. Now there's a few things you can do to tidy up here. You can run this is 240 grit. Run just on the edge there, just to clean up where the knife was, so there's no little baggy bits. You can do the same. Do the same for the control surface. Okay, now this tape can come off. Hopefully what you're left with is a fairly clean looking wing with a nice constant sort of close on the gap there, and you get about that much deflection, which is probably not quite enough, so we might go down a little bit further on that. Just yep, simply means doing a bit of sanding along this edge. And then we get a little more. Okay, but that hinge is not floppy free, but now that it can move both ways, it will free up very quickly and be quite good. Okay. Easy to push. Okay, last thing then. We'll get the right piece. Top piece. Again, just make sure now that we have the trailing edge established, we can mark out and we can cut out the hole for the servo. Okay, so we basically have a jig. Everything that you want to do repeatedly, you should make a jig for. These are fantastic. I just did a bunch of foam cutting the other day and got 4 full sets of wings, which I worked out was like 37 actual profile cuts, plus the blocking out cuts, and not a single stuff up. So very good. Now, one of the things I love about these phones is that I can store a PDF on them. And what I have on my phone is a little, let me stick it so you can see it. It's a document basically that at the top end has all of the amounts of epoxy that I need to mix for different parts, and the next part down has the full wing layout that I'm looking for. Now I've made this a little bit redundant by making these, and by making these, and using these is much better. But one of the things I need to know is, where is the servo hole? This tells me it's at 225 from the root. So what we need is an approximate of where 225 is, which is about here, and we need to simply put a piece of tape marking, and then I can mark it exactly. Okay. Alright, and the thing always to check when you're using these things is that you're not against here, but you are actually against here. Because guess how I know that can cause a major cock up. Okay, so basically I've got different types of aircraft here. This one says ELF, and the ELF there, if you can see there's a mark, so that's the trailing edge mark for the ELF. And that positions it this way, and positioning it this way obviously is the 185, hence the holes etc. through here, so that you can see the line depending on where it is. Okay, so ELF, where's the line? There's our line. There's our line. And now I've found that even though there is a slight curvature there of the wing, fortunately it's the underside of the wing, that masking tape holds this sufficiently. Okay, so there, and there, and there. Okay, that gives us our location of our hole. I use a laminate trimmer. It's basically a small handheld router. It's just easy to use, and because it does this kind of work, you know, a few times a month, it's perfectly sufficient. Now, one good thing to do with your templates is write notes. So this is the top, and this is the top. Guess how I found out that if you do it this way and not that way, it doesn't work. So line up top with top, and it says use the 1/2 inch bit. So I've got a 1/2 and a 1/4 inch, so I've got the 1/2 inch bit in. The only other thing is to make sure that the depth that the bit is set at isn't going to go screaming through your wing. So that's got about 5 mils of clearance. That's 190, that's 175. So 5 mils is good. But if you're nervous, you just lower it a little bit and see how you go. Now, secure, double check, get it ready. See? Top. Okay, now you can breathe, because there's carbon dust in that. I try to always leave it all there and just dump it straight into the bin. That's all we need for that cut. So basically we just walk this whole thing over to the bin and tap it in. And there we have one servo hole meeting up with, I don't know if you can see that there, yep, meeting up with the hole that's been burned in through. Couldn't see it before, there was a piece of tape over it to stop resin getting in during the back bagging. But there you go. There she is. Okay, we take this last piece of tape off and essentially we have a wing ready to bag up, as in package up. So there you go.